You just sat down. No music, no podcast, no phone in your hand, just you and the quiet of the room. And if you stay there long enough, something in your mind starts to move. Not urgency, not plans, something slower, something that only shows up when there's nothing competing for it. Most people can't do that for more than 2 minutes. You've been doing it for years. What neuroscience found about that habit and the 7 others like it is not what most people expect to hear. Habit 1. Extended silence. You don't fill silence. You sit in it. People around you treat quiet like something went wrong, and they fill every pause, every lull, every moment between sentences with sound. You don't have that reflex, and they find it unnerving. The silence is real. The discomfort it creates in others is real and measurable. Neuroscientist Imke Kirsta at Duke University found in 2013 that 2 hours of silence per day triggered the growth of new cells in the hippocampus, the region of the brain linked to learning and memory. The brain doesn't need stimulation to develop. Sometimes it needs the absence of it. Your silence isn't disengagement, it's neurogenesis. Your brain is building while theirs is just running. Habit 2. Deep focus on one thing. You do one thing at a time. You go deep instead of spreading across 7 tabs, 3 conversations, and a background podcast. People call you slow, behind, inefficient. The group chat keeps moving, and you haven't opened it in 4 hours. And they're not wrong that you're operating differently. Dr. Earl Miller at MIT found in 2008 that the brain cannot actually multitask at a cognitive level. What feels like multitasking is task switching, and each switch costs 40% of productive cognitive output and raises cortisol measurably. Every time you resist the pull to split your attention, you're preserving the neural architecture. Most people are quietly eroding. You're not behind. You're building myelin, the insulation around neural pathways that converts repeated deep work into permanent expertise. Habit 3. Moving alone without content. You take walks, alone, without music or a podcast filling your ears. And you know what people assume, that you're antisocial, that you must be processing something heavy, that the silence means something is wrong. They're not entirely off. Something is happening. Researchers Marilee Opezzo and Daniel Schwartz at Stanford published a 2014 study showing that walking, especially undirected walking without external content, increases divergent creative thinking by 81%. Not thinking about a problem deliberately, just moving, and letting the brain make connections it couldn't make while sitting still. Your solitary walks aren't aimless. They're your brain's most productive sessions, the ones that produce insights the schedule never could. Habit 4. Replaying conversations. You go over what was said, hours later, sometimes days later. The words, the pause before the answer, the thing you almost said but didn't. People who care about you have tried to help you stop, called it overthinking, told you to let it go. And they mean well. The behavior is hard to watch from the outside. Dr. Susan Nolan-Huexema at Yale spent decades studying this exact pattern. What she found is that not all repetitive thinking is the same. Worry is circular, it doesn't resolve. Reflective processing is different. It converts experience into structure. It's how the brain extracts signal from noise and builds coherent judgment over time. Consider this: a manager once asked his team for an immediate decision on a significant contract. Everyone else committed within the hour. He said, "Let me think about it." 2 days later, his answer identified a clause no one had read closely enough. The pause cost him nothing. The judgment it produced saved the organization considerably more. You're not stuck in what happened. You're processing it into something you'll use without remembering where it came from. Habit 5. Observation without performance. In a room full of people, you watch more than you participate. You don't perform interest, you don't feel. You don't fill conversational space to manage someone else's discomfort. And people notice. They draw conclusions. That you're arrogant, that you're bored, that you think you're above it. The reaction is real and it follows you. Research published in Psychological Science found that even a few seconds of unexpected silence in conversation triggers a measurable physiological anxiety response in observers, a stress signal that compels most people to speak whether or not they have something to say. You don't have that compulsion. That stillness in a room is not distance, it's pattern recognition. And pattern recognition requires silence to function. You can't observe and perform at the same time. But here's what I want you to actually sit with. Are these habits building something? Or have some of them quietly become the walls? There's a version of deep focus that's become avoidance, a version of silence that's become armor. A version of replaying conversations that has nothing to do with processing and everything to do with control. Only you can tell the difference from the inside, and the honest answer matters. Habit 6, deliberate information limits. You don't follow the feed. You're not tracking breaking news. You've quietly disengaged from the information cycle most people around you are permanently plugged into. And you know what they say, that you're out of touch, living in a bubble. And in some ways you are. There are conversations you can't fully participate in. Author and NYU professor Adam Alter documented in his 2017 book Irresistible how social media platforms are specifically engineered to exploit dopamine feedback loops, the same neural mechanism behind slot machines. The average person now consumes over 11 hours of media per day. Your disengagement isn't ignorance, it's dopamine calibration. The less you need the feed, the more your brain learns to trust its own signal over noise. Habit 7. Saying no without explanation. You don't over-explain. You don't negotiate your time with lengthy apologies. You say no, and you mean it, and you don't send a follow-up paragraph justifying the decision. People take it personally. Relationships strain, some end, and the cost is real. It's not imagined. Dr. Vanessa Bones at Cornell published research in 2016 showing that boundaries set without excessive justification are perceived as more credible over time and respected more durably than those backed by elaborate explanation. Explanation signals uncertainty. Clarity signals the decision has already been made. A man was asked to join a weekend project call. He didn't apologize, didn't negotiate, said 5 words, "I'm not available Saturday." That was it. 6 months later, when the organization needed someone to lead a restructuring, someone whose yes actually meant something, they called him. Not because he had performed loyalty, because he had shown them he knew his own edges. Habit 8. Sitting with discomfort. You don't immediately reach for the phone when something feels uncomfortable. You don't fill hard feelings with noise. You sit with them. And from the outside, this looks like you don't care, like nothing touches you. People assume that. Sometimes they say it directly. Research from Harvard Medical School and the work of Dr. John Kabat-Zinn on stress response has shown that the capacity to stay with uncomfortable internal states without acting on them or suppressing them produces measurable structural changes in the prefrontal cortex. Reduced amygdala reactivity, more durable emotional regulation over time. Most people outsource that regulation to distraction. You've built it into your wiring. If you're a man, at least one person in your life has called most of these habits a problem at some point. Too quiet, too withdrawn, too in your head. Not a team player. What nobody says out loud is that these same traits, the stillness, the filter, the capacity to stay with discomfort without performing a reaction, are what make a man almost impossible to rattle in a crisis. They don't train for that. You've been training for it every day without calling it training. Follow for more on the psychology of quiet intensity. The deepest structural changes happen at the level nobody's watching, not because they're hidden, because they take time. And most people stopped waiting long before the structure was finished. Which of these 8 hit closest to home? Drop the number in the comments, I read them. And if you know someone who's been doing this without knowing why, send it to them. Sometimes the right explanation changes everything.